Hello and welcome. This video is intended for those users of the iGuide listing tool system, and its purpose is to explain and to go over floor plans, explain what the measurements are and how floor area calculations are derived. So it's a guide for realtors and users of the iGuide listing tool system. The iGuide system itself is a listing tool that provides interactive 3D tours and floor plans and photography. My name is Paul Madden, and I'm the owner and chief photographer with Madden Photography. And I've been providing iGuides to our realtors in Simcoe and Muskoka for more than 5 years now. So what we'll talk about here is we'll talk about standards for measuring. And the question may be, are there any standards? Well, the answer is yes. The measurement process, how we actually get on site and we perform the measurement process in a particular property. We'll look at floor area calculations and explain how those numbers are derived. And then we'll just quickly talk about measurement comparative issues and solve some of the questions that may come up regarding common questions that may come up regarding some of the calculations that the iGuide system will come up with. And the purpose of this, of course, is to provide you with information or the tools in order to be able to answer questions and explain yourselves what's happening and how we come up with these numbers. So let's open up an iGuide right now, and we'll get right into a floor plan that's going to show us that we can use to demonstrate some of this stuff. So actually, I'll back it up a little bit here if we're So this here would be an example of a nice property here that we have. When we open it up on realtor.ca, or we also can open up the link in the iGuide report that we receive as a user of the iGuide system. And it defaults to this 3D tour kind of thing, which we can walk through interactively across the property, but we're not going to go through that. That's for another time. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the details here, and we can download our floor plan. And anyone can do this right from the listing on realtor.ca, actually, because iGuide integrates fully with realtor.ca. So let's talk about the floor plan. But before we actually do that, let's just talk about standards for measurements. And so is there any standards for measurements? Well, here in Ontario, there actually isn't a standard for measuring properties for real estate. And actually, there's very few standards that exist out there. And this is one of the, I guess, one of the areas that causes a little bit of trouble because there is no standards. If no standards are followed, then one person's measurement versus another could come up with completely different numbers. However, the iGuide system does follow a standard, and if we actually go to the bottom of our floor plan, you can see here there's more information about the standards that are followed. In Canada, one province does have a standard, and they make sure that all of their realtors follow that standard, or it's a requirement, and that is called the RECA RMS 2017 Real Estate Measurement Standard. If you want to read up about that a little bit more, you can just copy this link to your browser. And again, that's the standard that was derived in Alberta. So we follow that standard. We're also compliant with the American National Standards Institute standard for property measurements in the US. And you can also check out the details of that in this particular link right here. So the iGuide system does follow some recognized standards, and let's just go through this now and we'll explain how this actually all works. Briefly, to capture the data before we can even create a floor plan, an operator such as myself will come out on site, and we'll actually walk into each of these individual rooms here, set the camera down, and we'll take 3 measurements of each room, and that will be a laser measured capture. At the same time, it's also capturing photographic images that's used to produce the 3D interactive tour of each room. Once all of the rooms have had their information captured and I return back to my office, and then I create a draft floor plan, make some modifications to a few different things as far as which rooms we're going to include in the 3D tour, etc. Then I upload that data to the iGuide mothership, as I call it, where they have professional drafters, which then take that data and they create the floor plans that are delivered to our desktops via either the iGuide report or that are made available right from the iGuide system itself. So that's how it's captured. Once we receive these floor plans, then we can take a look at what information we have in it and explain how some of these numbers are derived. So in this case here, the first page shows all the floors that belong to this particular listing, and it will say main building total exterior floor area above grade, and it gives you the number of square feet right here. So the total area above grade is a number that is a total of all exterior areas that are included, all floors that are above grade, and those totals are added together for each floor. Above grade, the standard follows the rule that in order for a floor to be above grade, all four walls have to be above ground level. So let's just look at each individual floor and we'll see a little bit more information about what is done here. So on the main floor, for example, we have an exterior number value, and we also have an interior value. People are not always used to seeing an interior value, but this can be helpful because this is actually the available living space in the home. So where do we come up with these numbers? So the first thing we do is we, as mentioned, we go into each room and we measure each room with our iGuide system. Because we're measuring on the inside, we measure each room. We're at the same time we're capturing the length of the inside of all the exterior walls. So with that information, we can add up all of the, we can calculate the total interior area. So in this case here, it's 1,582 square feet. What we also do is we measure the thickness of the exterior walls. In this case here, it would be 8 inches, I believe, and that's measured manually at the door. And then because we have a perimeter value and we have a wall thickness value, we can multiply the wall thickness by the perimeter, which comes up with the exterior wall footprint. And that exterior wall footprint is then added to the interior area total, which then provides us with our exterior area total for that particular floor. Okay, and again, these numbers are 99.6% accurate. When we look at this floor plan, we see a couple of things here. We see some colored areas. These colored areas are just made for simplicity for looking at different rooms. Each room will have its label and its measurements indicated on here. And in this case here, we can also see that there's a white area that has no color called a Muskoka room. And I'll explain what that means here in a second. Muskoka rooms are very common here in Muskoka and Simcoe County. All white areas are not included in the floor area calculations. And the reason for that is because one of several reasons. They may be three-season rooms, they may not be heated, they may not be a part of the original structure, they may not be livable. There's a number of different reasons, and again, the reasons are outlined in the standards that we talked about earlier on. The only time we have an area that's excluded areas will be indicated in white here. Some other examples of excluded areas would be garages, or if we have lofts with sloped ceilings, only certain sections of those areas can be calculated for interior square feet. And I believe it's at the 5 foot level we can begin to calculate or include that as an interior square feet. But again, refer to the standard for the exact parameters around what's included there. But if we had a room here, this was a second floor, and we had a room with slope ceilings, it would show you which the areas in white would indicate which parts of those rooms are not included in the floor area calculations. In this case here, we move on to the lower level. So we call this lower level, and it's below grade. Not all lower levels are below grade, but again, as mentioned before, below grade indicates that at least one of these walls is below ground level. Again, that's just following the standard that is indicated here. We can change this to be stated as above grade, and then it's up to the realtor to explain, or if your real estate association allows for that exception, we can actually change this to below grade or above grade if required. But following this standard, by default, it goes to below grade. And we again have our exterior and interior areas. One question that sometimes comes up with uh, different floor area calculations. Sometimes lower levels will have slightly different exterior and interior area calculations. And as you can see in this case, we do have a slight difference of, I think, 30 or so or 40 square feet. Sometimes those calculations the differences can be in the wall thickness of the in the foundation of the lower level. Sometimes there may be cold storage areas that are not included in lower levels that are excluded from floor area calculations. Those are just a couple examples. When there is a discrepancy, it's usually fairly minor, within, under 50 square feet. We move on to the next page here. We can see that we just have some totals here, that a summary page showing all the floors and their particular measurements, which you can easily then take and add to your listing. Not all floors, only major rooms, I should say, are listed here. It doesn't include closets and other kind of things. Just main rooms are listed. And again, under floor area information, you can then see here your main building, which would include your main floor and lower level. In this case, it pulls up the floor area calculations. Also shows you the perimeter of the wall thickness, where we add the exterior wall footprint. So it shows you what that calculation is here. And then we get a total above grade floor area for main building. So including all floors above grade, this is what your totals are. Okay, obviously if we had more floors that are above grade, those totals would be added to the total above grade floor area in this particular case here. In the last page, you can see some definitions here on some of the things that I've already talked about. I'm not going to go into repeat some of these things here, but things like interior area, excluded areas, exterior wall footprint, grade, et cetera, are all explained in this little section. And of course, we have our references to our standards that are included at the bottom here. The last thing I wanted to touch on was some comparative issues that we might see come up from time to time. And what I mean in this case is that you may have a case where someone brings forward, perhaps a seller, the original floor plan of when the property was originally constructed. And there may be a difference in the floor area calculations or total calculations between that floor plan and the one we generate. The important thing to understand for these people to understand is that builder floor plans are pre-existing construction. So this is what the intention is for the builder to build. And often it doesn't include modifications that occurred that the owner has requested, or additions or renovations that have since occurred. So our floor plans show current existing structures and the measurements of that. Builders' plans don't always include those things. So ours tend to be more accurate for that reason. The second issue that occasionally comes up, maybe a property has been previously listed and another realtor has measured the property, and there's a difference between what we come up with and what the previous realtor has come up with. So we have no way to um, uh, understand what methods that the previous listing or previous realtor may have used to measure that property. We don't know if they followed any standards or uh, what areas were included and not included, etc. So we can't compare to previous measurements. The only thing we can say is that we can question whether there was a standard that was followed and that the measurements that we have come up with do follow standards and are uh, very accurate and can be explained fairly thoroughly. So yeah, essentially we just can't verify where other measurements come up with, and the other associations that may come up with floor area calculations. We can't justify whether or not they've used any standards as well, whereas the iGuide system does use a standard and is a professionally measured system. So that can help you. And then and the last point of that is that if there ever is any questions regarding differences between measurements, or you need some anything explained, the benefit is that you can also always call the iGuide operator, such as myself, to help you explain to your client where maybe there is some discrepancies in the floor plans, because square footage is a sensitive issue and is often equated with value, one of the um, indicators of value to a property. And we can always solve these issues as they come up. And if I can't solve it, I have a team of drafters available to me that can explain this for us. Well, hopefully this has been helpful for you. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. Thank you very much. And again, as mentioned, I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you and have a great day.